A regulation was violated so that regulations could be obeyed. In April 1945, aviation machinists mate third-class Raymond Kowalski modified 73 Corsair wings without authorization. The modifications were not recorded in maintenance logs. They were not approved by engineering. They should have grounded every aircraft they touched. Instead, they kept 19 pilots alive through the Kamikaze gauntlet at Okinawa. The Navy would not acknowledge the repair for 16 months. And when it did, the official bulletin arrived 3 weeks after Kowalski shipped stateside. By then, variations of his patch were appearing on Corsairs across 5 carrier groups. No one could say who invented it first. This is what that looked like. The record exists in fragments. A single photograph taken by ship's photographer Charles Morton aboard the escort carrier USS Natoma Bay shows a Corsair with its starboard wing extended across the hangar deck. The wing surface is marked with irregular patches that do not match standard repair specifications. Morton's caption reads, "Makeshift repair, origin unknown, April 1945. The image was declassified in 1961 and now resides in the National Archives Still Picture Branch under identification code 80G328847. A separate document, Bureau of Aeronautics Technical Order 0140FG1, issued July 1946, describes what it calls field expedient reinforcement of fabric wing sections subject to fragmentation damage. The order does not name Kowalski. It describes the repair as if it were always known, but there are gaps in the maintenance logs from Natoma Bay between April 6th and April 18th, 1945. Those were the days when the kamikazes came in waves, when every plane that could fly did fly, and when a 22-year-old mechanic from Hamtramck, Michigan, found himself looking at a problem regulations could not solve. This is not a story about heroism. This is a story about fit. You stand on the hangar deck of an escort carrier in the Philippine Sea. It is 0430 on April 7th, 1945. The overhead lights emit a steady amber glow that flattens depth and turns skin the color of wet clay. The hangar smells of oil, salt, exhaust, and a faint metallic trace of hydraulic fluid that clings to the back of your throat. The deck thrums with the carrier's engines, a vibration that enters through boot soles and settles in your sternum. You can feel the ship's cant as she turns into the wind for the pre-dawn launch. The air is warm, thick with humidity that makes fabric stick to skin and causes metal to sweat. 30 feet above, the flight deck resonates with footfalls and the wheeled thunder of ordnance carts. In 4 minutes, the first Corsair will launch. In 6 hours, most of them will return. Some will not return whole. Kowalski works on a wing. The wing belongs to Bureau number 82467, an FG-1D built by Goodyear in March 1945. The aircraft returned yesterday at 15:30 hours with the starboard outer wing panel shredded along a diagonal from Station 190 to Station 220, a distance of 30 inches. The damage is not from bullets. It is from steel fragments, pieces of a kamikaze's engine cowling, flung outward when anti-aircraft fire detonated the incoming 200 feet above and 100 yards starboard of the ship. The fragments punched through the fabric skin aft of the main spar and tore 3 stringers. The aluminum structure beneath is intact. The fabric is not. Regulations require replacement of the entire outer wing panel. The replacement wing is 800 nautical miles away, aboard a fleet oiler that will not reach the task group for 6 days. In 6 days, there will be another 100 sorties and another 100 chances for this to happen again. Kowalski is short, compact, with hands that seem too large for his wrists. He has been a machinist's mate for 11 months. Before that, he worked in his father's tool and die shop in Hamtramck, making transmission housings for Chrysler. He knows how metals behave under stress. He knows that fabric, when properly tensioned, can absorb impact that would buckle thin aluminum. He knows that stringers fail not from the initial blow, but from the vibration that follows. He's been thinking about this since yesterday. Now, in the hour before launch, he acts. He removes the damaged fabric. It comes away in strips, revealing the aluminum structure beneath. 3 stringers are bent but not broken. He straightens them with a small hammer, tapping in a rhythm that produces a sound like a clock ticking. Each blow is measured. He checks alignment with a machinist square, holds it against the overhead light, sights down the edge. The stringers must be straight within 0.02 of an inch, or they will vibrate. Vibration will crack the rivets. Cracked rivets will fail. He moves to the scrap bin at the aft end of the hangar. The bin contains pieces of aircraft that have been removed and not yet discarded. There are sections of aluminum skin, segments of tubing, a cracked fuel bracket from a drop tank. The bracket is aluminum alloy, formed in a shallow U-shape, 3 inches wide, 8 inches long, 1/8 inch thick. It is scrap. It is also rigid, light, and perforated with rivet holes on a 1/2 inch grid. Kowalski takes the bracket. He takes also a section of control surface fabric, grade A cotton, pre-doped, from a roll that was damaged in transit and deemed unsuitable for standard use. The fabric is stiff, coated with cellulose acetate butyrate, and smells of solvent. It is 40 inches long, enough to cover the damaged section twice. He returns to the wing. The bracket fits over the damaged stringers like a splint. He drills holes through the bracket and into the stringers, using a hand drill that whines in the ambient noise of the hangar. He installs AN 470 rivets, 3/32 diameter aluminum alloy, spaced at 1 inch intervals. The rivets pass through the bracket, through the stringers, and into the wing's internal structure. Each rivet is set with a pneumatic gun that produces a sharp crack, followed by a metallic chime. The bracket is now bonded to the wing skeleton. It will not move. He cuts the fabric into 2 pieces. The first piece he stretches over the bracket from outboard to inboard, covering the damaged area. He secures it with dope and fabric tape, overlapping the undamaged fabric by 4 inches on all sides. The second piece he applies perpendicular to the first, creating a cross-ply that distributes load in 2 directions. This is not in the manual. Fabric is applied parallel to the airflow, not across it, because cross-grain creates drag. But cross-grain also creates strength. Kowalski dopes the edges, smooths the surface with a trowel, and waits. The dope dries in 6 minutes. He applies a second coat. The fabric tightens as it dries, pulling taut across the bracket. The repair is rigid, ugly, and 30% heavier than the original panel. It looks like something assembled from parts of 3 different aircraft. It looks wrong. At 0510, the flight deck officer inspects the ready aircraft. He sees the repair. He asks Kowalski what he has done. Kowalski explains. The officer says the aircraft is not flight ready. Kowalski says the aircraft is stronger than it was. The officer does not write this in the log. He does not report it. He walks away. At 0520, Bureau number 8246E7 launches. The pilot is Lieutenant Junior Grade Thomas Harmon, 24 years old, from Portland, Oregon. He does not know about the repair. He would not care if he did. He is thinking about the strike package, about the destroyer picket line, about the visibility. He is not thinking about his wing. The first Kamikaze appears at 0745, 12 miles out, altitude 6,000 feet, bearing 270. Combat Air Patrol engages. The Zero breaks through, trailing smoke, its propeller windmilling. It is aiming for the carrier. Harmon is inbound from the strike when he hears the call. He banks hard, climbs, closes to 400 yards. He fires. The Zero does not deviate. It does not burn. It simply continues, locked on a trajectory that will intersect the carrier's island in 18 seconds. Harmon fires again, hits register along the fuselage. The Zero's canopy shatters. Still, it does not deviate. Harmon closes to 200 yards, firing continuously. The Zero's engine explodes. Pieces of cowling, propeller blade, sections of wing separate and tumble through the air. One piece, roughly triangular, approximately 14 inches on a side, intersects Harmon's starboard wing. It enters from above, punches through the fabric, strikes the bracket, and stops. The bracket deflects it downward. The fragment exits through the lower fabric without touching the stringers. Harmon feels the impact as a shutter, sees a flash of metal, continues his attack. The Zero, now disintegrating, falls short of the carrier and impacts the sea 300 yards to starboard. Harmon returns to the carrier. He lands at 0815. When he climbs out of the cockpit, he sees the hole in his wing. He sees the bracket exposed through the torn fabric. He sees the fragment, still lodged between the bracket and the stringer, wedged in place by its own impact. He does not speak. He walks to Kowalski, who is already moving toward the aircraft with a roll of fabric under his arm. Kowalski removes the fragment. It is warm. He examines the bracket. It is dented but intact. The stringers beneath are undamaged. He patches the fabric. The repair takes 11 minutes. At 0900, Bureau number 82467 is ready for the afternoon sortie. Harmon does not file a report. There is no regulation that covers what has occurred. The aircraft should have been grounded. The bracket should not have worked, but it did. By April 10th, Kowalski has applied the bracket and fabric modification to 6 more Corsairs. He does not ask permission. He works during the stand-down hours, during the brief periods when aircraft are not launching or recovering, during the nights when the overhead lights dim and the hangar becomes a cavern of shadows and distant mechanical sounds. Other mechanics watch. Some ask questions. Kowalski explains the principle. Metal absorbs impact. Fabric disperses it. The bracket acts as both shield and frame. The combination is heavier than regulation allows, but weight in the outer wing section does not significantly affect flight characteristics if balanced port and starboard. The mechanics listen. Some try the repair themselves. By April 15th, 41 Corsairs across 3 carriers bear some variation of the modification. None of it is logged, none of it is authorized. On April 16th, a Kamikaze strikes the fleet carrier USS Intrepid. The aircraft is a Yokosuka D-4Y, carrying a 500-pound bomb. It hits the flight deck, penetrates to the hangar, explodes. Fires rage for 3 hours. 12 aircraft are destroyed. Among them are 3 Corsairs with Kowalski's modification. The wreckage is pushed overboard. No one examines the wings. No one asks about the brackets. The carrier withdraws for repairs. Kowalski's war continues. Between April 7th and May 8th, 19 Corsairs equipped with the bracket modification sustain wing damage from fragmentation. 16 return to service within hours. 3 are grounded due to structural damage that would have occurred regardless of the repair. The modification does not prevent all damage. It prevents catastrophic failure. A wing that would have lost its entire aft section remains flyable. A wing that would have required replacement requires only patching. The difference is measured not in days, but in missions, not in aircraft, but in pilots who return. In June 1945, a technical inspection team from the Bureau of Aeronautics visits Natoma Bay. They are investigating field modifications. They are looking for violations. They find Kowalski's repairs. They examine 17 aircraft. They see the brackets, the fabric, the improvised cross-ply technique. They measure weight increase. They test structural integrity using portable load frames. They find that the modified wings exceed the load-bearing requirements of the original specification by 18%. They find that the repair can be accomplished in 40 minutes with materials readily available aboard any carrier. They find that it works. They also find that it violates Technical Order 0140FG1 sections 12 through 19, which specify exact materials, dimensions, and application methods for fabric wing repairs. The inspection team files a report. The report is classified. Kowalski is not reprimanded. He is not commended. He is transferred to a depot ship in Saipan, where he spends the remaining months of the war rebuilding engines. He never repairs another Corsair wing. In July 1946, Bureau of Aeronautics issues Technical Order 0140FG1 Revision C, titled Field Expedient Reinforcement of Fabric Wing Sections Subject to Fragmentation Damage. The order describes the use of formed aluminum brackets as secondary structural reinforcement under fabric panels. It specifies dimensions, materials, and installation procedures nearly identical to those Kowalski invented in April 1945. The order makes no mention of origin. It is presented as engineering guidance, as if it had always existed. Copies are distributed to all carrier air groups. The modification becomes standard practice. Kowalski returns to Michigan in October 1945. He does not speak of the wing repairs. He does not keep records. He opens a tool and die shop with his father, makes transmission housings, raises a family, retires in 1982. He dies in 1994. At his funeral, a man introduces himself as Thomas Harmon. Harmon flew Bureau number 82467. He remembers the repair. He remembers the Kamikaze. He remembers landing with a hole in his wing and seeing Kowalski already walking toward the aircraft with fabric under his arm. He says he wanted to thank Kowalski for that. He says he never knew what regulation allowed the modification. Kowalski's son, who knows nothing of carrier operations, says his father didn't follow regulations. He solved problems. Harmon nods. He says that's probably why he's alive. The photograph remains in the National Archives. Bureau number 82467 was scrapped in 1946. No example of the original modification survives. The technique persists in Technical Order OR 40 FG1 Revision C, which was superseded in 1954 and is now obsolete. Historians who study carrier aviation rarely mention field modifications. Engineers who study structural repair do not cite Kowalski's name. The incident is a footnote, a minor procedural innovation, a solution that worked once and was formalized into doctrine. It is not celebrated. It is not taught. It is simply there, in the archives, in the technical orders, in the gap between what was allowed and what was necessary. There is a principle in engineering called fitness for purpose. It means that a component must be adequate for the specific function it performs under the specific conditions it encounters. Regulations define fitness in advance, using worst-case assumptions and safety margins. But sometimes the worst case is worse than assumed. Sometimes the safety margin is inadequate. Sometimes a mechanic on a carrier deck at 0430 hours, looking at a shredded wing and a 6-day wait for a replacement, understands fitness better than the regulation does. Kowalski never wrote a report. He never justified the modification. He simply made it, and it worked, and pilots returned. The Navy formalized it 16 months later. In those 16 months, the Pacific War ended. Carriers returned to port. Mechanics went home. The crisis that demanded the innovation passed. The innovation remained, encoded in technical orders, stripped of context, presented as policy. No one remembers the hangar deck, the smell of dope, the amber light, the sound of rivets being set at 0500. No one remembers the choice to act without permission because permission would arrive too late. The carrier turns into the wind. The deck vibrates. Above, the first Corsair launches, its engine note rising from a growl to a scream as it accelerates down the deck. The sound reverberates through the hangar, fades, is replaced by the next engine, the next launch. The cycle repeats. Kowalski moves to the next aircraft. There is a hole in the port wing. He has a bracket. He has fabric. He has 40 minutes. He does not hesitate. The light on the hangar deck never changes. It is always amber, always flat, always the same. Time is measured not by clocks, but by launches, by recoveries, by the rhythm of repair. A wing is damaged. A wing is fixed. A pilot launches. A pilot returns. The sequence is mechanical, relentless, inevitable. Somewhere in that sequence, in the space between damage and repair, between procedure and improvisation, between what is allowed and what is necessary, there is a decision. Kowalski made that decision 73 times. Each time he chose function over form, survival over regulation, fit over doctrine. He was never asked to justify it. He never tried. He simply did the work. The fabric tightens as it dries. The dope smells of solvent and time. The rivet gun cracks and chimes. The wing becomes whole. The pilot climbs into the cockpit, starts the engine, taxis to the catapult. The carrier turns into the wind. The aircraft launches. The cycle continues. It is 0520, April 7th, 1945, and it is always 0520, April 7th, 1945 in the place where regulations end and repair begins.